Good evening. Welcome to the August 5th, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Councilman Henderson lead us with the invocation. So if you will please stand for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us. Lord, we pray that you will be with our first responders on their job continuously. We pray for the people in Ohio and Texas that suffered such great loss this weekend. We pray that you'll just be with our council tonight as we make decisions that pertain to our city. We ask this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. The Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here. All present. First on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. C1, on behalf of the City of Troy Employees Casual for Cause Program, Community Affairs Director Cindy Stewart will present a check. Good evening, Cindy.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you very much. City Council members and City Manager and City Attorney, it's my pleasure today on behalf of the employees that we present a check for $645 to Troy People Concerned. We are allowed to wear jeans on Fridays, and we pick different charities, and since Troy People Concerned helps our residents who find themselves in a crisis situation, we are very pleased to be able to present this check to Dick Snyder, who is our president.
Thank you, Cindy. You said almost everything that I was going to say. As Cindy mentioned, my name's Dick Snyder from the Troy People Concerned. I'm the president of Troy People Concerned. And Troy People Concerned is a nonprofit organization that was established in Troy about 48 years ago for the purpose of helping Troy families that are in a short-term crisis situation. There are many reasons for that, but some of the most frequent ones are sudden loss of income, medical reasons, accidents. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all the city employees who participated in the Casual for a Cause program. And I want to thank those employees that decided Troy People Concerned would be a beneficiary of the program this year. And thank you to all the employees. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, C2 is the Economic Development Update. Glenn Lapin, our Economic Development Specialist, will make a presentation. Good evening, Glenn.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'd like to provide you with an update on economic development activity for the past quarter or so. So office vacancy rates continue to decline here in the city. From the second quarter of 2019, office vacancies are at 12.4%, and to be consistent with prior reports, that does not include the Kmart headquarters building, as that is not on the market and is functionally obsolete, so that is not included in the totals. That compares to 1 year ago of about 15.2%. and a 10-year average of almost 20%, about 19.9%. So a significant drop. You can see in the graph to the right in there that that precipitous drop since 2010. And then there is a projection kind of going forward by CoStar that we'll see some leveling off going forward and a potential increase in those in the vacancies potentially going forward for a little bit. Gross rents have gone up to almost $20 per square foot. 1 year ago it was at $19.65 and a 10-year average of $18.35. So as vacancies continue to decline, you're going to start seeing the rents go up. On the industrial side, very low industrial vacancy rates. We're now down to 1.4%, basically meaning we're pretty full on the industrial side. It compares to 1 year ago at 2.6% and a 10-year average of 6.8%. On the rents, $7.59 per square foot, compared to 1 year ago, $7.35 and a 10-year average of $6.11. Again, in the graph, very similar to the office, heavy decline since 2010. That continues to go down, and a comparable kind of leveling off going forward. On the retail side, again, very low, 1.7% vacancy rates on the retail side compared to 1 year ago of 2.4%. That compares to a 10-year average of 3.7%. A little more jagged on this graph, based on the ups and downs and, how people change their shopping habits and the internet and that kind of thing. So great gross rents are at $29.37 per square foot. 1 year ago was $27.44 and 10-year average of $25.18. So those rents continue to go up, and a potential forecast for increasing and going up going forward by CoStar. Looking at some of the projects and, that impact these numbers, and one thing I want you to notice in these companies, this is just a sample of some of the companies that have come in, is the variety of the industries that they are in. It's not just in one industry, which is a good thing. It's pretty diverse. The Lottie Group over at 901 Wilshire is a major Korean company that deals in engineered plastics manufacturing. They have a sales and engineering office, about 12 employees right now. Haltermann Carless, also at 901 Wilshire, is a German company that deals in hydrocarbon-based products and solvents. They're a major leader in Europe in that field. Homeland USA, a mortgage company in the financial sector, 19 employees over on Crooks Road, a very nice office over there. Aris Corporation over at 2600 West Big Beaver, they just moved there from a smaller Troy office. Aris started out with one person on staff. They continue to grow. They're now at 13 employees, have moved into 22,000 square feet of office space, and they expect further growth as well. Orbeck 3D is a Chinese company. 3D cameras and sensors is what they make. Again, they moved from a smaller company. They started out with 2 employees here in Troy. And further expansion is planned. They're now up to 21 employees at 2800 Livernois. SSDM is a digital marketing and advertising agency that moved from Royal Oak. They have 20 employees over at 850 Stevenson Highway. Preferred Financial Partners, the financial services agency, they opened up their own office in February 2019 over at the top of Troy building at PNC Tower. And over on Maple Road, on East Maple, Cutting Edge Countertops is a new showroom and warehouse on granite and stone countertops. And we're really starting to see Maple Road becoming a major focus for home improvement type outlets and stores. I think a lot of that can be attributed to, the long-standing history of the Michigan Design Center in that area, and a lot of other related entities trying to open up near them. So you see a lot of countertop, you see a lot of kitchen improvement, electrical, lighting facilities, plumbing fixture facilities as well, not to mention the Home Depots and of the world as well. So it's great to see Maple Road kind of focusing in that niche area of home improvement, which always has some good growth to it. We are seeing an influx of co-working office space here in the city. And what that is that it's a small office that somebody can lease, but then they share services. So for instance, if a business or company needs a conference facility, that's available to them at an extra charge. They can share kitchen facilities, they share a receptionist, and the idea is that the rents can be a little bit lower, even though it's a very small space. On a square foot basis, it's very expensive, which the developers of these properties really like, but for the actual individual person, it's good. Somebody's just starting out, it's a small company, they want to get their feet under them to get moving. This offers a great option. Regis has been a long time player in this market. They've had 2 facilities, one at Columbia Center, the other one at Liberty Center. Has been around a long time. Since then, Bite and Mortar has come on board over on Crooks Road, Next Wave on Stevenson Highway, Media Genesis has a co-working space, and AmeriCenter of Troy on Big Beaver. All those have been here for quite some time. New to the market, Epidesk over on Troy Center Drive. We're doing an opening for them pretty soon. The Intelligent Office, which we opened, I think about a month ago over at the PNC Tower building. Hubworks 360 is over at East Maple, kind of an industrial facility. The photo is there. There is from Hubworks 360. CityPace is on Indusco Court. That is in a large industrial facility that is run by Pantero. They own the building, and they also have shared office space there as well, and co-working space, and that's starting to grow too. And a new one will be coming in, expected to be opened in October. Sevenco is also located in Irvine, California. This will be their second location. They're taking the entire second floor of 888 West Big Beaver. It's about 21,000 square feet, so a major operation over there for Sevenco and co-working space. So I think we're going to see more of this in the future. We continue to see retail and restaurant activity here in the city. Somerset Collection now has Michael Kors, Ted Baker, Morph. Shake Shack has opened up a second location over at the mall. They're over at 888 West Big Beaver as well. At the corner of Maple and Coolidge, where Whole Foods used to be, Planet Fitness is open, and so is Profile by Sanford, which is a competitor to Weight Watchers. And the Jonas over there that own that property are looking to lease the remainder of the property, but no other tenants have been announced as of yet. They're in final negotiations with several of them. We continue to see health and fitness, such as Strength Lab, healthcare on the Beaumont side, and assortment of restaurants as well. Wheatgrass and Sprouts has been in Troy for a long time. They moved to the east, further down Maple Road, into much larger quarters for their business. Opportunity Zone. Troy has one. Troy, this is a federal program that was created out of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Troy's Opportunity Zone is located between Maple Road, Big Beaver, Crooks, and Livernois. And what this is allows for capital gains tax incentives for private investors. So as investors invest in an opportunity fund, and those funds get invested into projects within this zone, they stand to gain potential deferral of taxes on capital gains, and in some cases they can exempt those capital gains taxes. So it's very attractive for investors. We've got about 4 or 5 projects kicking around in that area that are potential. And the idea is to encourage private investment in low-income areas, as came out of the federal guidelines. And this does meet, based on the U.S. Census Bureau, for the low-income areas. It meets that definition for low income. Benefits are deferral, reduction, and exemption of earnings for this, and we do have information available on the Troy Economic Development webpage with some detailed demographic information in case there are some prospective lookers in this area. And if there's anybody out there that is looking and needs some assistance, they're free to call me as well, and I can be happy to help them. So Opportunity Zones could be big going forward as a potential benefit and boon to that area. On the radar, we are seeing several projects. Altair headquarters looking at their expansion is now going through Planning Commission review. That's a new campus development proposal on their existing site on East Big Beaver. That is a photo, a rendering of what it might look like in the future. It'll be a phased-in project. It'll have some public space as well, conference facility, restaurants, winter garden, and then future phases, additional office, parking structure, and that kind of thing. A great project by Altair. And Altair has been a long time business here in the city, and we look forward to working with them as they continue to grow here. Met Hotel, the structure has been demolished. However, there's no future use determined at this point. We're hoping for something to come up in the near future for that site, because the location is terrific at the corner of Crooks and I-75. So you can't get much better in terms of location on that. Kelly Services has owned 24 acres of property at Long Lakes and Crooks for a number of years, vacant property. And they recently sold that for $12 million to Long Lake Crooks Development, LLC. There is no future use determined for that site as of yet. Potential for a variety of different things, mixed use, corporate, office, that kind of thing, would be looking at to go in over there. And Huntington Bank, which is located in the Opportunity Zone, was sold to Bostic Group. It's 4.2 acres, 125,000 square foot office space. Right now they're looking at various options for that site. Future use is in discussion. It was sold for $9 million. The idea right now is to keep the office, renovate the office, since there is a market for that as well, and look at potential mixed use for the rest of the site, and we'll continue to work with them on that. And again, the Opportunity Zone being a huge benefit in that area. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Glenn. Councilman Pennington.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate the presentation. So the questions we get occasionally are on the Kmart, the old Kmart property, with rumors of recession coming, within a year, 2, 3 years. I'm just surprised there's no signs of any development. They just don't want to do anything with that property, because people ask.
So the Forbes Cohen that owns it, so the same owners as Somerset Collection, own the property. They purchased it a few years back, basically to control what's around them, which was wise to do that. And so they are looking at various options, and they will continue to look at the best and greatest opportunity on that site. But there's nothing that has been announced as of yet. They keep the property up. as best as you can for a 1.3 million square foot building that's empty. But we certainly would hope that there be a project being announced at some point that we could work with them on for that site. It's a valuable site. It's probably one of the most attractive sites in the state of Michigan. If you want to look at it like that, it's about 40 acres at the corner of Maple and Coolidge, so you can't beat that. I don't know if Mark, if you want to add anything to that.
Mayor and Council, I have met with Nate Forbes 3 or 4 times and have communicated with him via email to provide him information. I will tell you, they are actively marketing for the right project, and they're keeping their cards close to their vest.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Hamilton?
Thank you. I know that Kelly Services piece of land, it's like a woodland right at Long Lake and Crooks. How is that zone? What's the zoning on that? Do you remember?
Zoning that, I believe, might be research office of some kind, but it is in that office range.
So could there be housing put there, or would it have to be something office, or is there a mixed use
I'm not sure
available
exactly
to it?
the zoning code on that, but there is some flexibility in the code, and you can certainly look at a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm just curious what could go there, because it's a big piece of woodland.
Yes,
it's a
it
nice
is.
piece of land.
And a great location as well.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Glenn. You always give a very thorough and good-looking presentation with all that, and it helps when there's good news in the city, right? So thank you for that. My 2 questions. My first question is, at the vacancy rates, all 3 types of properties, they all have been going down fantastically for a number of years, and then they all 3 are projected to creep up. I think I know the answer to this, but is that, it's not specific just to Troy, it's region-wide, statewide, I mean, nationwide, I don't know, we're an unprecedentedly good economic time.
Yeah, so CoStar put these numbers together and the graph and the data. I suppose if you look at their information for any region around the country, you're going to probably see a very similar tick up. I think it's based upon projections on the economy, projections on how, people continue to change their behavior in terms of how they shop, things like that will all add into that.
Okay.
The more use of co-work office space as well enters into that as well.
I guess my other question related to that, we hear a lot about we're losing office tenants to downtown Detroit because they're doing great things, or maybe we're not losing them, but that's always the competition from what I'm hearing from a lot of people. I was just wondering if it correlated to them as well.
I don't think so. The roads work both ways. There are as many companies that want to be here in Troy and want the benefits of what Troy offers as ones that want an urban environment being in downtown Detroit. I think the region's big enough to handle everybody, and I really think as long as if Detroit continues to rise, I think it really helps us as well, because I think it helps the entire region when it gets better.
That's a good, positive answer, Glenn. Thank you. My last question is, and I don't know if you know the answer, but the old McGregor property on Maple that was torn down, I think they're putting a skilled nursing facility.
Correct.
There. Do you have any update on? It seems like there hasn't been a lot of activity there.
Yeah, it's been kind of slow. They're moving forward, but you're right, it has been a slow project. They've got the McGregor site cleared, right. So now they're just waiting to go forward. I can tell you right now that anywhere in the construction industry, it is very difficult. Costs have gone up tremendously because there's so much demand for the construction workers.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Mayor?
City Manager Miller?
I looked up the zoning of that Kelly piece of property, and it's zoned straight office, which is the lowest intensity office district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Good news.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no carryover items or public hearings this evening, so we will move to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. David Ashland, a Troy resident, has signed up to speak on I-8.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Council. It's a pleasure to be here again. Now, I'm going to start by talking about the ways we have spent money. A quick amateurish summary. I think we spent about $250,000 on the Civic Center Development Project with the Gibbs Planning Group. I think we spent about $21,000 on the Lang report, which some council members later rejected as being trash. Then we spent about $68,000 on the forensic engagement report. That was also rejected as trash by some council members. We proposed spending $100,000 on the finance director's termination package, but fortunately, the majority of council rejected that. And we may spend something on the order, as I understand it, of $75,000 on the Ryan Wolf settlement. Now, if you add all of these up, you come up with roughly $500,000. And these reports, in my perspective, with the exception of least expensive, which was the Lane report, provided little or nothing of value to the city. Now remember that number, 500,000, call it $500,000. Now, if you're willing to do this, I would like to view the council membership as a basket full of apples. 7 apples, 1 basket. I've noticed over time, and increasing in intensity, this basket of apples has developed a stench, a stink, a rotten smell. The smell, I'm sure, is not due to all of the members. I am sure that some of you council members, some apples, have the sweet smell of financial integrity, moral leadership, and honesty. But it only takes 1 or 2 of the apples to be rotten to make the entire basket smell. The entire basket stinks of financial corruption, lack of moral integrity, and lies. Former Finance Director Darling is quoted as saying, "In my mind, I'm pretty assured that certain council members knew of the stuff going on. I knew the council pretty well, and you know what? They didn't have a problem with it. The tone from the top, it's part of doing business."
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, remember that $500,000, and I hope that the proposal to investigate each council member will go forward, because I think we need it as part of the cleanup of our past business. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Aaron Green, Troy resident, also wishes to speak on I-8.
Good evening, Council. There's not a whole lot more to say after the previous speaker, but I did want to comment again because as yet, despite repeated attempts by most of council, in fact by all of council, to attempt to simply go past this, some to dig in where necessary, some to investigate, some to disclose, but everyone to move on. I don't think we can yet, which is why this is an agenda item. And the reason is that so far, most of you have done an upright, outstanding job. Some of you have grudgingly come to the table where necessary, where appropriate, or simply because the audit makes very clear that it is absolutely required for the largest city in one of the wealthiest counties in the country, and therefore the world, to do their due diligence and make sure that this basket of apples, to mix a metaphor, smells like roses. And some have not. I am going to call out one particular council member who is not acting appropriately, in my opinion, and I will stick to that. This council has been told by the auditors that it was a culture of compliance from the top, that there were people who would have come forward who were scared, people who were yelled at, people who were browbeaten. It was a problem, and the problem that allowed it to continue was a culture of compliance at the top, a bit of a, not to be gender specific, but a bit of like a good old boys club. And I question that attitude. And I question whether the idea of bullying and browbeating has really sunk in as to whether or not that's an issue. Because this weekend, Councilman Henderson, who has said that as part of his openness, needs to make everything public. We can go to his Facebook page and talk with him and be public, and that will be open, and he'll have a conversation. He posted a meme of a snapshot of a disingenuous image from a council meeting that was open, wherein he denigrates and insults another council person's wife publicly, and he's running for mayor as a bully, and that's disgusting.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak on public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. It's an opportunity for council or administration to reply. Any replies or comments this evening? Next on the agenda, there are no postponed items, so we'll move to regular business. I-1, board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening. I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Baker for city council appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to appoint to the Charter Revision Committee Robin Beltramini and Shirley Canoza, both for the terms expiring April 30th, 2022.
Support.
Sounded like you.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilwoman Hoderick that we appoint Robin Beltramini and Shirley Canoza to the Charter Revision Committee for the terms that expire 4/30/2022. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to Robin and Shirley for stepping up to serve on that particular committee. I-2, there are no mayoral appointments or nominations this evening. Are there any city council nominations? No. We will move to I-3. There is no request for closed session this evening. I-4, the ProTech membership. City Attorney Bloom, did you wish to make an introduction on this item?
Yes, this is something that we have been asked to rejoin. Actually, they've sent us invoices every year for the past few years. We have been a member for approximately 10 years. And one of the benefits that we get, it's a pooling of resources for municipalities, and the cost of it is $10,122.50. And with that, it is hoped that we will have an ordinance, a model ordinance that would be provided, as well as some advocacy to defend against some recent state and federal legislation in telecommunications.
Any questions for City Attorney Bloom? I know there were some questions asked by council that are on the yellow sheet on the table this evening. Any other further questions? Somebody like to move the resolution? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move I-4, ProTech membership as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve I-4, which is a resolution to approve the city's annual membership for ProTech as printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes. I-5 is the Ryan Wolf v. City of Troy. City Attorney Bloom, once again, would you like to make an introduction to this resolution?
Yes, I'll be very brief on this one. Essentially, this is a business proposal, a settlement, and it's in recognition of the defense costs that the city would incur. I would just also indicate that that this is a case that is distinguishable. It's a very unique factual pattern. So we do not see it being used as precedent for other employees. And the settlement amount is recommended at $75,000. This is pursuant to a facilitation that the parties engaged in. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for City Attorney Bloom from council? I know there's quite a lengthy write-up in the agenda packet explaining this item. Someone wish to move this item to the table? Councilman Pennington?
Move I-5, Ryan Wolf versus City of Troy, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Pennington and supported by Councilwoman Hoderick that we approve I-5 as printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion on this item? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington,
Yes.
Mayor Slater,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
No.
Motion passes. I-6 is the standard purchasing resolution number 10, which is a travel authorization and approval to expend funds for City Council members' travel expenses for MML 2019 convention. City Manager Miller, did you wish to?
Yeah, I have a quick intro. Councilman Hamilton came forward to us seeking to get approval to attend this convention. And then Councilwoman Hoderick also mentioned that she would like to go. Since this is in Detroit, we don't expect any overnight lodging, but we do seek approval, and I don't know if there are any other council members who desire to go. But I would note that there is an agenda item after this, which would authorize the delegate and alternate delegate for the convention.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Miller? Somebody like to move I-6 to the table? Councilman Hamilton?
I'll move I-6, standard purchasing resolution number 10, travel authorization and approval to expend funds for city council members' travel expenses, Michigan Municipal League 2019 convention as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hamilton and supported by Councilwoman Hoderick that we approve I-6 as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Any further discussion? Councilman Hamilton?
Just wanted to let everyone know I requested for the city manager to only charge the city for the cost of the convention, for no food costs, no other outside costs, so just for the registration fee for the convention, for me. So that's all I'll be asking. That's all we'll be getting reimbursed for. With it being in Detroit, I think that's appropriate.
Any other discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington,
Yes.
Mayor Slater,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Yes.
Motion passes. I-7 is the appointment of a voting delegate and alternate to the MML League. City Manager Miller, did you wish to say anything more on this?
I don't think I need to say anything else.
Councilman Hamilton?
I'll move I-7, appointment of a voting delegate and alternate to the Michigan Municipal League MML. Be it resolved that Troy City Council appoints David Hamilton to be the voting delegate and Ellen Hoderick to be the alternate for the Michigan Municipal League 2019 annual meeting being held at 4:15 p.m. on Wednesday, September 25th, 2019 in room 320 at the Cobo Center.
Support.
By Councilman Hamilton and supported by Councilwoman Abraham, that we approve I-7 as read into the record by Councilman Hamilton. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick,
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington,
Yes.
Mayor Slater,
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion passes. I-8 is next. The City Council investigations. City Attorney Bloom or City Manager Miller, whoever wishes to make an introduction.
Yes, we did prepare a memorandum for Mr. Miller and I, and this is in response to the request for further information on investigations, and we stand ready to answer any questions or receive any direction from City Council.
Thank you. Anyone on council will wish to comment, ask questions? Councilwoman Hoderick?
In many ways, we would just like to move on and not talk about this anymore ever. I would love to. But the question that keeps going through my mind is, what is my responsibility after reading that audit report? Since 2016, we've been in unprecedented waters, and I've been treading water the whole time, trying to stay afloat, and we keep working to move on. The forensic audit made great recommendations, very specific recommendations that we see a report in the report section of the agenda tonight where staff is stepping up to address each of those items. Personnel have been assigned moving forward. A city that has long rightfully prided itself on compliance can be assured that we are better for having made this investment and implementing the improvements based on the lessons learned. I saw a comment on one of the articles on social media from a resident who apparently teaches ethics somewhere, and she's using our recent experience as an example for her students. Good for her. I'm all about that. Let's learn from us. Let's just learn and move forward that in the most constructive way we can. As one of the members of the public pointed out, the key overriding finding of the audit was the fact that the City Council created a culture of complicity. I guess I'm wondering, how do we fix this without identifying the specifics of how this impression was made? If we have learned anything since the original Craig Lang investigation, it's this: where there is smoke, there is fire. And maybe the fire has already been put out. I'm not sure if I'm still smelling smoke or not. The question is, how do we look into this? We see the city manager and city attorney's memo kind of looking, this is very unprecedented. We're asking to investigate ourselves, essentially. How do we practice oversight on ourselves and give assurance to the community that the individuals representing them are doing so with integrity and a high regard for ethics and the rules of governance in a council-manager form of government? To me, the culture of complicity finding is essentially a surfacing allegation in the forensic audit that we can approach one of two ways, it seems. One way is to kind of shove it aside and hope the November election takes care of just fully resetting us and moving forward. Another way is to face the allegation head on, identify if it has merit and why it does, and make sure we learn from it. In the corporate world where I came from, if the work of an auditing team surfaces an issue of compliance that may involve misconduct of some sort, the matter is then turned over to an internal investigations team to dispassionately determine if that surfacing allegation has merit or not. If it does, then a discussion of potential repercussions occurs. Is it possible that, and we made this investment with Plant Moran, that we might take that initial work and the interview notes that they have that they talked about with us, and an investigations team, perhaps from Plant Moran, could take the baton from the forensics team and follow through so that we can specifically learn what contributed to the culture of complicity and make sure that we correct it, learn from it, and move on from it. That's one thought I have. I don't know if that's the best solution. Just in the spirit of having a really constructive dialogue amongst ourselves and with the community, we report to the residents, you're our boss, you should be looking at us with a side eye and wondering, have you really handled this? I don't know that I can answer yes, and that's what I'm struggling with.
Any other comments from council on this item? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Miller and City Attorney Bloom, for putting together this memo. And when I initially brought this up and sought consensus, I had a feeling that the answers that I would be getting would just create more questions, or at least not necessarily a clear path. Your memo confirmed that for me, so thank you. But I did, looking at it, And I hear what Councilmember Hoderick just said, and I think she made a lot of good points, and I hear what the community talks about, and I hear what other people in the community talk about also, and a lot of it's not about any of this stuff, right? So there's definitely a mix of, or varying levels of, I would say, care on this issue in our community. But I still stand by the fact that as long as there are residents that care about this issue, it still needs to be dealt with because you can't ever put that to bed completely. The question then, of course, becomes what do we do and how? Hearing what Councilmember Hoderick just mentioned about having Plant Moran potentially take the baton and move forward, it's intriguing, it's interesting. I guess I worry about the cost related to something like that, and without a narrow scope, I could imagine that ballooning, and that's probably not the wisest course either. But but again, on the flip side of that, I look at what we have now. I'm a little bit, reading the Plant Moran report and the talk of a culture of complicity and what council members or council as a whole did to contribute to that. It still very much bothers me that we don't have any idea what they were referring to. And I would assume that they do have some information as to why they stated it that way. And I'm also assuming that it's not just because one former finance director's comments, one person made them. I would assume that there would be more to that. Looking at our charter, we have a whole section on investigations. 4.8 gives us this great power with no guidance on what to actually do with that power. But it's a powerful power in that, as we sit up here tonight, none of us are under oath. None of us are required to tell the truth. The investigation powers, you can subpoena us to actually have us testify and tell the truth and under penalty of perjury. And I think that would help tremendously in some of these issues. The other thing that I learned that I think was very valuable from your memo, and I appreciate, is the conversation about, and I might be assuming a little bit in how your tone, but there has been an FBI investigation. There's been other investigations done, and it seems that there's no further criminal allegations and things that have come out of any of this. And I think that's fantastic news. What that doesn't address for me is potential ethical violations. Those are potential ethical violations haven't been investigated or researched. And I also have learned through all of this that our charter doesn't really provide any means for dealing with any council member who violates the Troy City Council Code of Ethics that we sign each year. So we have these ethics that we sign, and it seems we have no means to enforce whether or not somebody actually is upholding them or not. And I think that's an issue that needs to be dealt with, if not this council, a future council, but it's something that should be looked at because history can repeat itself, and we certainly are trying to avoid that. So regardless of any investigation, a potential thought I have is that we need to somehow look at a way to deal with that. I'm hesitant to say, let's try to move forward and look at, see what Plant Moran could do for us. They were, of the investigations we've had so far, they were the most costly. I'm also hesitant, as I understand, having someone like a Craig Lang do another investigation into council members, obviously not Craig Lang, but having one person do it will be, regardless of the results, I suspect that one person, it'll be try to be delegitimized in any way if somebody doesn't like the answers they get. And yet, I don't see any other way to look into some of these issues. I think there are real questions that need to be asked of each of us on council, whether or not there is whether or not there are clear questions is the issue, because I don't think it's about gotcha questions of, did you do this, did you do that, but trying to get somebody to come up with a set of questions that we answer. And again, I have no problem answering under oath, under penalty of perjury to these questions. I think it's important. But about our involvement in creating that culture of complicity, and if there was a means or if there was an idea of anybody on council or in city management as to who could do something like that that would be neutral and cost effective, I think that's what should be done. And maybe it results in, it's not hundreds of hours of interviews of city employees. I think those interviews have been done already. There's probably good information that could be gleaned from previous report notes. But at the end of the day, I think that it's not too much to ask for each of us on council to be able to sign off on something saying, no, I didn't do these things, or here's the disclosure of something that I was involved in. I don't think that's too much to ask in this case. And I think if we were able to do that as a council, we could then say, okay, we've looked into ourselves, we've put some kind of weight behind it under penalty of perjury, and let's try to move forward in the most positive and proactive way. So I'm open to any suggestions from anybody else on that level, but that's kind of where my mind is after your very thorough report, which again, I thank you for.
Any other comments on Councilwoman Abraham?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ashland touched on, the money spent to date on various items. The Plant Moran audit was about $70,000, $68,000 to be exact. In that audit, there were a number of recommendations and possible next steps suggested. And a lot of those next steps are more tangible ones that city staff can recommend, whether it's how you handle petty cash or managing expenses through the credit card. But the big recommendation, or I'll say the big finding out of that report, was the tone at the top and the culture of complicity. And it was deemed so important, they attached a 12-page memo on the importance of it and how it could be addressed. So when we talk about spending our money, I want to make sure that we follow through on every recommendation that came out of that report. I don't want to sweep this aside because it might be timely or it might incur extra costs. To me, we will have misspent $70,000 by choosing not to pursue certain recommendations because it's difficult. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to address it at some level. I think Mayor Pro Tem Baker makes a good suggestion of maybe we need to relook at our ethics code and maybe put some teeth into it. I don't know what other cities do. I'm sure there are varying ways that municipalities address ethics and ethics violations and to varying degrees of success. So that might provide us some guidance. But I still struggle with, ultimately, you can't fix what you can't see. And right now, I don't have a good view of what contributed to that culture of complicity. I can make guesses, but that would not really be appropriate. And as an engineer who makes decisions based off of evidence, that's not really a great approach to take. I like my evidence-based decision making. So I too am struggling with a neutral third party who can look at the situation dispassionately and make recommendations. My preference is to take action sooner rather than later. It's already been 3 years since the Lang report's come out. We missed an opportunity 3 years ago. Last year we had to make decisions, and we're continuing to make decisions. I don't want to miss this opportunity. We could wait till the next council. Maybe some of us won't be sitting up here to deal with it, but I feel like it's kicking the can 3 months more down the road when we need not. So, Mayor Pro Tem Baker, if you're looking for consensus on potentially looking at the ethics code and maybe putting teeth into it, I'd be supportive of that. But I'm also supportive of a neutral third party. They can put me under oath. I have no problems with that. And ask me any question they want of my 4 years on council. I have No issue with that whatsoever. I have nothing to hide. And I would have no problem with that.
Councilman Pennington.
Well, unfortunately, with the making comments under oath with a third party, that's an attorney. That would be an investigation. So it would either be an internal investigation with city attorney's office or an attorney hired outside source. I would not be a fan of hiring Plant Moran for future endeavors. They did a report and they gave us all the information. I agree with Councilwoman Abraham that we should go with these recommendations and move forward. But no, I would not be in favor of hiring them and spending more money on an investigation that basically outed Tom Darling and just kind of took the Craig Lang report basically and just kind of ran with it, and then outed Tom Darling on a few allegations. Now, as far as an internal investigation, like you said, I have nothing to hide, but I don't think, let's not kid ourselves, we as a body are not going to get past this until we're out of city council. People that I talk to in the city and on the street, they ask why we can't get past this. Well, there's one councilman, or Dave Hamilton, who sends people up here on a regular basis that are going to constantly bring this up. So, we're not going to get past that until we're out of city council, like it or not. David Hamilton will be the only one that will not hear of this until he's out of council. That's just the way it's going to be.
Councilman Hamilton.
I don't send anyone up here, so that's a lie.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, all fingers point to Dave Henderson because he's running for mayor. And, I've been probably scrutinized more than anybody in this Brian Kishnick situation. And if there's any stink on this council, it's because of Brian Kishnick, not because of anybody else. Brian Kishnick is serving prison time. If I have to reiterate it again, I spent an hour and a half with the FBI. They found nothing. There was nothing that I did to contribute to that situation. And if you, as a body, decide that we want to investigate this further and figure out what's hidden behind whatever rock you think is hiding, sign me up. I'll be the first one to, under oath, give testimony and discuss everything that the FBI has already asked me and vetted me for. So I'm all for it, but I'm not all for spending another 60 grand to try to get another report to further somebody else's political career, because this is, it's cost the city a lot, not only financially, but reputationally. And we do need to let it die. And again, if you guys all want to go through another round of this, so be it. Sign me up first. I want to be the first person under oath to testify.
Councilman Pennington.
I just want to make a little rebuttal. That is not a lie, Councilman Hamilton. You got together with a resident and you ganged up on the mayor on the driveway. And it was obvious to me, I was not in town, but it was obvious to me after watching that session that you two coordinated and beat up the mayor and his wife, I might say, on that driveway. That was obvious to me. So that is not a lie.
Councilman Hamilton.
Beat up his wife is a lie. I never have ever mentioned. It's a lie to say I beat up the mayor's wife, is what you just said, which is a lie. That's all.
Whatever.
Okay.
Stunning.
Once again, there's good dialogue, but I think there has to be a specific, if you're going to make allegations or you're going to call people out, you have to be specific with what what you're saying, instead of making innuendos and beating around the bush. If some council member believes that somebody did something wrong, you have to be specific about it, okay? That's my opinion. You have to be specific. You can't make end arounds and make insinuations. Nobody's going to ever deny that they are not going to tell the truth if they're asked under oath to tell the truth. And I don't think anyone on this council would ever shy away from that. As I said at the last meeting, this is a group of good people, okay? Some reputations have been tarnished and will continue to be tarnished because of one guy. And this one guy is just causing all kinds of issues for other people, and he's the one that did wrong. There's no other criminal investigations that have shown anything else for anybody else. I know, and I agree with Councilman Pennington, we're not going to be able to move past this as long as there's a continuation that this is going to be brought up. But I don't know how you investigate insinuations without somebody being specific and saying, if they know something, say it. Say it. And then we can move forward. I don't know how you investigate insinuations. I really don't know how you do that. The tone at the top, obviously it was him. Okay? I don't know of anything else, personally. But I'm not in favor of spending any more money unless there's a specific accusation. And then, by all means, let's do it. Let's go forward. I agree with Councilwoman Abraham. We asked Plant Moran to do a forensic audit and give us recommendations. We should follow each and every one of them, and I know Mr. Miller is doing exactly that. We're not going to get them all done at once, but I know Mr. Miller is going to finish that, and that report's going to come to us, and it's going to be finished. I don't know how to move forward or tell the city attorney what to do unless there is something specific to tell her. So if a council member here has something specific, I'm all for doing this. Let's have an investigation on something specific. There was an accusation made specifically to me about my driveway. And in my opinion, with the help of the city manager and the city attorney, that issue's been resolved, as far as I'm concerned. If there are any other questions about it, I think they've all been asked and answered. But if there are any other specific accusations, I think now's the time to bring them up. Councilwoman Abraham, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I did reread the Plant Moran report before tonight's council meeting, and it does make clear that the tone at the top and the culture of complicity didn't stop with Brian Kishnick. It also included council. And that's why I think we as a body need to address it. This isn't something staff can do. The tone at the top is us, because the buck stops with us. So we need to demonstrate action, us, the 7 of us up here. I am certain that every single one of us would be 100% truthful under oath and answer every question that was put before them. However, there very well could be actions taken by any one of us that made us complicit in Brian Kishnick's actions, and we're doing it unknowingly. And I think we need to understand if we did something unknowingly or unintentionally. And that's why a neutral third party could suss this out more effectively. I don't think people took actions intentionally to damage the city. I don't think they knowingly took actions to damage the city. But sometimes that happens, and we don't know it. I think that's the thrust of why some sort of investigation is necessary, because the 7 of us are not neutral third parties, and that's a fact. So I don't want to speculate. I don't want to throw out rumors. That's not proper at this table. But we do need someone to look at us, be that neutral third party, and tell us dispassionately if we have contributed to a problem that led to our city manager soliciting and accepting bribes and making him feel like he could do anything and that employees were powerless to speak up. We owe it to our residents to make sure this never happens again, and we can't do that until we understand what the problem is and if we contributed to it and in what way, because it was pretty clear in the forensic audit that we were part of the problem. We can't fix us until we know exactly what needs to be fixed.
Councilman Hamilton.
Councilmember Henderson has mentioned that he was interviewed by the FBI and that they didn't find any federal criminal activity, and I respect that. And all the questions I've been asking, my focus is on ethical behavior or unethical behavior, or behavior that contributed, kind of what Councilmember Abraham said, that contributed to allowing Kishnick to run our city, to allow a criminal to run our city without proper oversight. So I'm not looking into this to find criminal behavior. If it comes up, so be it, but I'm assuming the FBI knows what they're doing, and if they haven't made charges, that's that. But my focus on all this is a lack of ethics, a lack of disclosure, and to see what else there is. The forensic audit said we had a culture of complicity, and that to me is stunning. It is saying we, as a body, did actions that allowed Kishnick to thrive, and that future councils need to not do those actions. And I don't know what all those actions are referring to are. And that's what I want to find out with this. And I'm more than willing, as everyone here has said, and I appreciate it, to go under oath and say what they know. I was only in council for 4 months, so I'm kind of an outside party, but I'll answer truthfully, just like I'm sure everyone else here will. That's it.
Councilman Henderson.
So those are the kind of vague accusations that are so disturbing and just frost me and frustrate me and irritate me. And it's unfortunate because there is nothing there. The fact is, the guy at the top, the one guy, Brian Kishnick, was a tyrant and he treated people poorly. And 7 of us, I know Councilwoman Abraham has a full-time job. She's not at City Council 7 days a week or 5 days a week to monitor what Brian Kishnick does. I know Councilwoman Hoderick has a full-time job. She's not here 5 days a week. I'm not here 5 days a week. Councilman Pennington runs a business. He's not here 5 days a week. This is a guy that we chose to run the city of Troy, and he acted inappropriately. And for guys like a Tom Darling on a forensic audit to not dig in and try to defend his position, I don't know, it would be silly for us to assume that he's going to go under that kind of fire and not defend himself. And it was some petty cash violations, and he makes the assertion that people on city council approved of it and were okay with it. That's just not true. Had we known about those kind of things, we certainly would have spoken up and said something. So for us to be accused of being complicit to all of Brian Kishnick's actions, no, we were complicit with a lot of the good stuff that we saw the things that he hid from us and we couldn't see because we're not here 5 days a week. This is a part-time position. You found that out. It's just, we have to have maybe a better policy. How do we as 7 manage a city manager or a city attorney for that matter as 7 individuals that are not here 5 days a week in a full-time position? So maybe those are the things we need to look at. But in terms of, if you want to accuse me of something that I haven't done, keep it up. I'm going to keep fighting back. And I'm sorry if you don't like it or if you're uncomfortable with that, but that's just the way my nature is. I am going to dig in and I'm going to fight back, and I'm not going to sit and take bald-faced accusations to my character and my integrity, which is a stellar reputation built up over 57 years from anybody, not you or not anybody. So that's just my feelings on it. Again, bring it on. I will sit and talk to anybody about any aspect of my involvement in city council, especially as it relates Brian Kishnick, and we'll clear the air if you want to clear the air, but bring on the specific actions that you think I've been involved in, and let's talk about them. Talk about them here if you want.
Councilman Pennington put his hand up before. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Well, since Councilman Hamilton has initiated this investigation months ago, so I've been asking questions around the city. My family's been in the city for 52 years, and I know a few people in the city. And so it's come to my attention that there's a second council member whose name is not Dave Henderson that was questioned by the FBI. And if we're going to do an investigation, I think we need, at this point, we need to sit down, if it's a closed session or whatever, we need to sit down with City Manager Miller and possibly the FBI, and we need to find out who knew what and who was questioned and all of the players, because all of us knowing little bits and pieces of information and me getting information from some people, it's not helping in the rhetoric and in the sniping that this council's going through. So if we have to sit in a closed session with this FBI investigator, that's at least a phone call that he owes us, City Manager Miller, just so we can all be on the same page as to what happened, who was questioned, why they were questioned, and what the thinking was. If we're going to continue investigating ourselves, I think that's where we need to start.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks, Mayor. I share Councilman Pennington's frustration that I seemingly know nothing about what the FBI has investigated in this city, and it's been very hard to have a conversation with anybody in public because it seems there's more people in public who know about things than I do, and it sounds like you too, which is really tough. I don't know that they'd be willing to come meet with us in that setting. I don't know how that would work, but it certainly is frustrating that we hear about it, but we don't actually have any details. And to the mayor's point earlier, I appreciate you saying what you said, and I certainly have been very methodical in the things I've said with a certain amount of vagueness intentionally, because I don't think it's responsible or a good idea to throw out accusations from this table and do it that way. I am pretty much fully prepared at this point to bring a council referral to the next meeting. I think that I can piece together based on what's happening tonight. And no, it won't be the most specific and perfect thing, but I think it'll be a good starting point for this council to further discuss and move forward. But that is why I've not made any specific allegations, because frankly, what I hear in the community is I take most of them as rumors until I have reason to substantiate them and believe them otherwise. And it would be grossly unfair for me to say, you know, I heard this, so I think we should investigate. And I go back to it really is about all of us. These reports don't single out any one of us, which is frustrating, and maybe by design. And maybe we learn after some investigation that they're not as substantiated as they are, and we can have some peace with that and move forward. The other aspect of that is, I think Brian Kishnick has been fully investigated at this point. He's in prison. I mean, that's done. But it's important not just for the 7 of us up here, but for the city as a whole and future councils to have some kind of look into what kind of behavior is not appropriate and what council members shouldn't be doing with a city manager, or in creating that kind of environment. I think that is the key takeaway for what we need to look at from an ethical standpoint from where we are. And I am, like I said, prepared to bring something forward at the next meeting, and I'm sure we'll discuss it further then. But I guess I just want to say thank you for all of you for participating in this conversation, and again for the memo that you folks provided to start us off.
Sure. Absolutely. Whenever a council member wants to bring forward a referral, that's an appropriate way to do it, and it will generate more discussion, and that referral can be changed to add stuff to it, depending on what it says. So that's always an option. Councilwoman Hoderick?
Councilman Pennington, I did talk to the FBI and was interviewed by the FBI. In fact, I brought up from the council table and encouraged anyone who had information to be sure to call the FBI if they had information at the time that indictment came through. You know, I attended the sentencing hearing of our former city manager, and judging by the number of people I saw from the city in attendance, I suspect that the FBI has talked to a lot of people. They are very detailed in their investigative work, and I'm pretty sure he's not going to come in and share what he's been up to with his investigation, especially if it remains an open investigation. When I attended that sentencing hearing, this has been a very difficult process for me and for this entire council. 4 city staff, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of wanting to work as a team player, but at the same time struggling with oversight, speaking specifically to the ethics that we wanted to have, and doing it to the best of my ability. And I spoke to that with that FBI agent. What I wanted to see at that sentencing hearing was an apology, a sincere apology, and I personally did not feel the sincerity of it, and we are still suffering the burden of what we went through. I think reputationally, if we can demonstrate that, okay, we went through this, we slipped down the slope badly, and we're going to learn from it, we're going to be as self-reflective as we can be as a body. Open to one another and share the learnings for future councils, for future city managers, so we can demonstrate to the residents that they can go back to not watching us on Monday nights and being worried about what we're up to. That's what success looks like. And really owning a situation, learning from it, really learning from it, and demonstrating those learnings. I think we can do that. That's what I experience in this community and all the various organizations I've been involved in. That's the spirit that's in this community. Things like this happen in organizations. If we can really say, yep, we have really looked at ourselves and learned from this. I don't know what specifically is meant by culture of complicity, or I'd spell out more of a specific. It was in the audit. It was very compelling to me. It's a surfacing piece. The scope of that audit was forensic in nature, and so it stopped at that point. That's how it works, unfortunately, because you do have to have definitions. But we have learned so much. Let's not finish the learning. Let's really understand, what did we do wrong? It does take more than one person to create the situation that we were in. And I'm not singling out individuals. We as a body, what can we learn? I appreciate it, Mayor Pro Tem Baker coming up with the idea of looking at us and, together, and we're not targeting any individuals. The staff has been candid and honest and talked about a lot. We can too. And I look forward to whatever you bring forward with your referral, and I appreciate the time you're taking to think it through. Thank you.
Councilman Pennington.
So I did not sit down with the FBI and have a conversation with the FBI. You sat down with the FBI. Mark Miller had the chance to sit down and talk with the FBI. And City Attorney Bloom, you also sat down with the FBI and talked with the FBI. I did not have that opportunity. So I would like that phone call and reach out to him, because as far as I'm concerned, we can't move forward until all of us have all the facts and who knew what and when and who had the inside information and who did not, because I feel like I'm in the dark over here and I'm getting a little pissed off about it.
Okay, let's see if we can wrap this item up for this evening, at least. City Attorney Bloom, I saw you taking serious notes this evening. Do you have any suggestions at this point? From my personal point of view, I heard some excellent recommendations from council members, and I think it was Councilwoman Abraham that, or maybe Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Take a good close look at the ethics and see if there can be some teeth put into it, to see if there have been some way that there can be teeth put into it. I know when we put those together, many times you talk in general terms when we do that, and I don't know what the law allows in regard to that, and possibly if you could get us a little report on how we could put teeth into the ethics. You know, it's 3 months before the next election, and there are at least three council members that are running for office, and it's certainly an opportunity to have citizens ask questions directly, and I think that's going to happen, and people are going to have to answer questions, and I'm sure they're going to be very truthful in those questions and answers. So I think that's a good opportunity in the next months that the public will be asking questions. I don't know what Mayor Pro Tem Baker's referral is going to contain, but I'll be anxious to make some amendments to it once I see it. But City Attorney Bloom, do you have any other suggestions after taking notes tonight?
So obviously the ethics, you've all noted it, that it really doesn't have a whole lot of teeth. There are really no sanctions for any violation of that. So certainly that is something that we can work towards and do some proposals. Again, it's not going to be a perfect situation. We have done research on other communities. I do have a lot of that information. You need to kind of give us some direction, but we'll give you kind of a broad stroke with that. That is going to be prospective only, however, and not retroactive. As far as, I just wanted to clarify also, Councilman Pennington, I know that you're frustrated, and others have mentioned that as well. We did not, the FBI had its investigation. They do their investigations as they're going to do, as Councilwoman Hoderick has indicated. They're not very likely to come and share with the City Council. They didn't share with us. They talked with each individual, whoever they wanted to. They told us who they wanted to interview, and I don't know what the questions were. I don't know what the answers were. The FBI did not share that with us. We do not have that information and are not likely to get it, especially since it is not closed. So I just wanted to clarify that, it's, the FBI was running that show, and we don't know what the results of it were. And yes, it is frustrating, but we don't have any additional information to get to council, and it's not likely that we will be able to get that.
Well, then I would at least ask for conversations that you two can relay with the rest of council and what you know, because it just feel like I'm in the dark over here. And I don't care, I don't know if we have to sit down in a closed session where everyone, can talk about it or not. I don't know how that works.
I'm not sure how to respond to you because I don't know.
I don't know how to ask.
I presented information documents only. That was my role. So I don't have any information that you're not aware of. I presented documents only.
Mayor?
Mr. Miller?
Related to the former city manager's investigation with the FBI, where I get my factual information is from the prosecution filings, the sentencing memo, and the plea agreement. And the FBI did not reveal anything else to me.
Okay, so how about all the interviews with the other employees? Did either one of you sit in on those interviews?
No. I don't even know who they interviewed.
We were not invited. We were not. It would not have been a part of the process at all.
See, this is where, in my opinion, we're treading on some very difficult issues, because I don't want to put the city employees in a position where they've talked candidly and openly with an investigator, knowing that what they talked about was not going to get public. And I've had enough experience with the FBI that they're not going to come in here and talk to us. This is an open investigation still, and they're not going to talk to us. And they shouldn't talk to us, in my opinion. They should not talk to us. And they shouldn't tell us what some employees have said, in my opinion. And I think we're going to open a severe can of worms here if we open an investigation and subpoena witnesses from the city to testify here. I don't think that's fair to them, and I don't think they want to do that. And that's what's going to happen. If you continue to want to press to have an investigation without specific accusations. And I'm afraid what's going to happen to the employees here. And this can have a serious effect on the future whenever a city employee is going to be asked something. If they know, and I don't want to get back into the attorney-client privilege stuff, but when you talk to somebody thinking that things are going to be kept a secret and then they're not, you lose credibility for them to do that again. And I want you to be cautious with the employees, because that's who I really care about here. They're the ones that could get put in a position that I don't want to see them put in. So, City Attorney Bloom, if you could just give us a memo on information from tonight with the ethics and potential other options, and we'll see what the referral that Mayor Pro Tem Baker brings forward.
And Mayor, it's possible that Mayor Pro Tem Baker was actually going to be adding that to his referral. I'm not certain of that. For the ethics part of it, and
I think it would be important to know what you can put into that, or the referral maybe just to have you do it, or whatever.
They're potentially two different issues, and if one's forward or prospective, and the other one's more retrospective. I think they should be not in the same referral, but I certainly give consensus to having you put together some kind of updated memo as far as teeth.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's opposed to that. Councilman Henderson?
Yeah, just one last comment, since I know the spin machine is going to look at all this and start throwing some ideas out there, but to Attorney Bloom's point, it is still an open investigation, but when my conversation ended with the FBI, his parting comment to me was, if you have anything you want to add or change tomorrow morning, give me a call. I never called him. He never called me. I sleep very well at night knowing that I gave him 100% of the truth in every aspect of every question that he asked. So if it's ongoing, I'm certain it's not pointing in my direction, so rest assured.
Any further discussion on I-8? Next is the consent agenda. Anyone on council wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? I know there were several questions that were asked this evening. They've been asked. Councilman Henderson?
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support. Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion on any of the items this evening? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you were here on a consent agenda item this evening, they've all been approved. There are no memorandums and future council agenda items this evening. Now is an opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Certainly appreciate you residents staying through I-8. I'll first call on Don Dougherty, Troy resident, who wishes to speak this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for letting me come up. Don Dougherty, I live at 140 Latonia Drive. I've been a resident here in Troy for over 25 years. I'm a retired technical consultant, 40 years selling to colleges, universities. Also a retired Troy firefighter, 20 plus years, Station 3. And as always, we just appreciate the support we get from this body. And the staff members, they've been very helpful. What I am bringing up tonight is there's construction on Latonia, new homes, the big ones with the archway frontage. And we've noticed in the last year, 2 homes have gone up already on Latonia. There have been issues with watershed and elevation on those homes. Now there's 3 new homes being constructed just adjacent to I'm about 3 lots from it. But I've talked to all the surrounding neighbors, and they've had issues. They've had issues with the homes that have been completed, watershed, the building construction contractor has been less than positive with them. And I can't speak for them, but I think the council needs to understand that there are projects going on out there that may not be following our building inspection codes. I'll give you an example of what brings me here tonight. In the 3 lots adjacent to my area, they dug the basements. The basements were dug from what I could see, probably 3 or 4 feet from the ground level. Well, I'm a 6'4" person. If I stood in there, I'd be, probably 3 feet above the ground level. So that brought my attention, and I was very pleased by writing you folks. I had some feedback from the council members. We did some reviews, and an inspector came out this week and worked and did some things. But I will tell you, just as I came in tonight, they leveled the grades. Those grades are 4 feet over the next door. You can literally stand on that front porch grade and look into the neighbor's front room window. That's not in my opinion, what the code is providing. I really think we need to look and see what's going on with these building projects. George Ballard said that, and I'm going to paraphrase in an email he wrote me. He said that they don't go out and inspect until after these projects are completed. We may need to have something go on during the process.
Mr. Doherty, that's the 3 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've all gotten the emails and we understand. We'll be asking some questions tonight, I believe. Next, I'll call on Jeff Tenniswood, Troy resident who wishes to speak this evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Jeff Tenniswood, City Council. I live at 3801 Estates Drive. I've been a 35-year resident of the city. My family built its first building on Commermere Street, multi-tenant light industrial building in 1974. Since then, we've built and repurposed over 150,000 square feet of building in the city of Troy. All of our business resides here. Of the 70 tenant spaces that we manage, 6 of the spaces we leased to medical marijuana caregivers. This week, one of my tenants notified me that as a result of a physical condition, she can no longer stay in the industry and is leaving the building. That building is 21,000 square feet. The space that she is vacating is 5,000 square feet. The goal cap of 36 caregivers in the city with no transfer policy leaves me with few options with regard to re-renting the space. With 3 caregivers in close proximity and the fact that it has been built out specifically for the cultivation of medical marijuana leaves me with an unrentable space. I'm requesting that the City Council reconsider its 36 caregiver cap and allow for transfers from caregiver to caregiver for only the property locations that have been operating under the current city ordinance, Chapter 104. As I stated in my letter to this council, the perceived burden on the city and the negative image that the opponents of this industry have asserted simply have not come to fruition. By leaving the 53 locations in place and allowing the caregiver to transfer the medical marijuana grow operation license, the city could employ a transfer fee on top of the annual license fee. My suggestion would be a $2,500 transfer fee to cover the background check and building inspections as required by the building department and fire department. In addition to that, I think it would be fair to tack on the additional $1,500 license fee for a total of $4,000 for a transfer. I do not propose the city expand the footprint of this industry in Troy. However, I believe as a long-time tenant and resident and business owner that the current footprint only affects our city in positive ways. As we saw from our economic development department, we have very low vacancy rates in the industrial zone in particular. A lot of these caregivers have ended up in those buildings, and a lot of those buildings are antiquated and obsolete. We have low vacancy rates, increased rental rates, and to date, not to mention, the city has collected $158,000 in fees from these caregivers over the past 14 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron Green.
I'm back on a similar but not the same issue. Discussed this evening was the idea of coming forward and being put under a subpoena, under oath, to really clear things up. There is concern there, and darned if you do, darned if you don't. There's concern there of instigating a witch hunt. It sounded like you, Mayor Slater, were concerned about that, and that's a legitimate thing. Being too open-ended is a serious question. I have at previous council mentioned that there seems to be a lack of recognition by some of council that this, as noted, the culture of complicity was at the top, not just the city manager, but council. Where precisely? Unclear. And therefore open-ended accusations because none of us have spoken with the FBI, and the FBI is not forthcoming. We don't know whether that's citizenry or the city attorney or council members themselves, unless they happen to know something, and that's not what I'm suggesting. I want to be clear. I am not suggesting that any of you either came on council or on council act with the specific intent of malfeasance, wrongdoing, anything along those lines. I am saying that there needs to be a recognition that you need to look at this straight in the face. As Councilman Hodrick constantly says, you need to look at it, own it, and move forward with that. And that is all I'm looking for. And yet, I hear things like bullying. Again, you see this as bullying against other people. You suggest attacks, Councilman Pennington, coordinated or otherwise, and they are not. There are some citizens who are aware of what's going on, and I'm not saying our eyes are wide open. We are aware of what is happening in city government. We pay attention. And that means that we're aware that there are concerns that are in need of addressing. The auditors came forward and provided very clear ideas of what to do. So do them. I was there when the report was given, and you downplayed the idea of, it's just some tips. That is a culture of complicity. It's a couple of bucks. That's the idea. Own it. Recognize it. You're a business owner. If your guy was like, I'll take the company card and spend a few bucks, would you fire him? That's what I thought. Own it.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Next, I'll call on John Mayernick, Troy resident, wishes to speak.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
I've been in Troy for 26 years. I live by the White Barn Church down in Livernois. When I was young, one of my friends stole $20 from me while we were playing in my bedroom. And to find the culprit, my dad suggested that I position another $20 on my dresser and invite each friend back to come and play. My dad said, once a thief, most likely always a thief. So I did. And as we played, I would leave my room and return to see if the money was still there. Friend after friend visited my house, and the $20 was safe. Until one time, I left my room to spring the trap and returned when my friend grabbed the cash in front of me, and he was no longer my friend. I tell this story because this is what should have happened to disgraced City Manager Kishnick when it was first discovered that he was taking unbelievable advantage of his position. It is incomprehensible to me that a man who stole from all of us should continue to be in control of a nearly $140 million budget and hundreds of people's jobs. There needs to be zero tolerance for all city employees with a control over any part of the budget. If they steal, they're gone. They're prosecuted, they go to trial. This is simple, and this council failed. In my opinion, with all the bickering that went on just recently, it is clear to me that the atmosphere that was created was most likely, you guys didn't fire him, giving him the God complex that he so had. That's what it was. I don't think anybody here managed to do anything wrong. I will vote for candidates who will fight to curb the power of the city manager, an unelected position with an immense budget, who is difficult to fire, has a contract, is not directly accountable to the people, can possibly manipulate to his benefit the mayor and the council when the situation is right. We need change, or in some years in the future, when we're all old, another council with another mayor and another city manager will waste more tax money and further hurt the reputation of the city. We've not had a good record of city managers either. And the power, I believe, is too great, and this position must be broken up. The mayor in the last council meeting on July 22nd asked, how do you convince people that you haven't done anything wrong? I don't believe there's a good answer. Partially because I don't believe anybody on the council had bad motives giving Kishnick a second chance. I think the council tried to protect the reputation of the city by sweeping Kishna's deeds under the rug, creating an action plan, then waiting nervously for the contract to expire. And I don't think anybody here knew the depth of his deception. The FBI helped us with that. And once a thief, most likely always a thief. I do not have an answer for the mayor's question except for this. The council should have fired him the first time. It would have been hard, possibly embarrassing, possibly trouble in the news, but it would send a clear message that Troy is serious about good values in government. Then I'm pretty sure no one here would be asking, how do we convince people that we haven't done anything wrong? For future council members, do the right thing immediately, and you will have my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses.
May I speak again?
Did you sign up, sir?
No.
What does councils want to waive the rules and allow them to speak, or?
I'm fine with it.
Consensus is to waive the rules. Mr. Ashland.
I just have to say again that I don't know who you were talking about, Mr. Pennington. People who are organized and asked to come up and make comments about these issues. I have never been asked. I come up because I am the kind of person that Mr. Green was referring to. I follow what's happening to the best of my ability, not being in closed sessions, not hearing every conversation between council members, but I follow. And I take offense to your suggestion that there's a cadre of people who come up here because they're asked to do so. I take offense because I think he may be thinking about me. No one asked me to come up. I read things, I decide what my position is, and I come. Now, I got cut off earlier. I had made the point we spent $500,000 on reports. I think if we do an investigation, as Councilman Baker is talking about, it should be done by an unbiased, non-city employee, non-council member group. We've spent $500,000 on reports that were meaningless. Maybe it would cost us another $50,000, but we need to do it. We need it. This city needs cleansing and needs to be cleansed by an outside cleaning agency, not our own. Thank you. And by the way, after my first talk, I found this. Somebody had placed this on my material. I have no idea what this is. Can anyone help me?
You could just leave it on the podium, please.
I picked it up?
A pointer.
It's a pointer.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak on this item this evening. This is an opportunity for council or city administration to respond. City Manager Miller, did you want to respond to
The Latonia situation?
the Latonian situation?
Yeah, we have City Engineer Bill Hoodry waiting back there. I know that he has response to this. What I will say is we've had George Ballard go out there. He's not an inspector. He's a registered surveyor. But Bill, I'm sure you could add some light to this.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I did print off a copy of the email that George has sent to Mr. Doherty, and I'm a little surprised because his response was, thanks for the details. It'd be interesting to see the finished lots and how they compare to your drawings. My basic concern is foundation levels would be similar as the new home across the street from these three. Watershed was not good for the two neighbors. Nice presentation, George. So I didn't expect what I heard tonight, but it is a rather detailed email that he sent back, so it's rather lengthy with some sketches of kind of what George has surveyed out in the field. For a new home, typically what he gets at the end is an as-built. So before they can do anything past that point, the as-built gets certified, he goes out and checks at that point. In this case, he did go out in the interim and do some checks, and that's what he created his drawings from. So that information was sent to him. It was sent to City Manager Miller. So that can be sent out to you as well so that you have the same information. But in general, what he saw out in the field is not out of line with the standards that he uses when he does final grade inspections. The one house on, let me see, the brick ledge elevation on the west side of 68 Latonia is about 1 foot above the existing ground elevation and matches the brick ledge of 58. And then on the other side, it's about 2.5 feet above existing ground and 1.3 feet above the finished grade. So those fall in line with the standards that he uses when he goes out and does a final grade inspection. So at this point, there's nothing that he sees that's out of line. Perception and how you look at what's being done out there is, even when I saw pictures, it is something that you look at and say, wow, that looks high. But you can't get the perspective. I mean, there's quite a ways between these houses. So when you look at grade, you also have to look at proximity to the house next door. It all kind of works together. I mean, in general, a house, when you build it, you want to build it up so it drains away to the property lines, to a swale, to storm sewer, rear yard drain, what have you. However, it's set up to drain and handle the stormwater on that site. A lot of sites, it's just a swale along the side that goes to a rear yard drain in the back or something like that. So I'd be happy to get this up to the city manager and he can disperse to...
I believe we got that.
Okay.
I think that was sent to us. I recall seeing that.
Okay.
Any questions from council for Mr. Hootery? Councilman Henderson.
Just one, he mentioned going into the basement of the current one that's being built and the elevation being high. Is that not normal? I mean, I know there's reasons like water tables and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Not prohibited?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It kind of caught me off guard with that question. I mean, a basement's typically 8 foot, 9 foot if you got it a little extra high. So, I mean, when things are being built, they look kind of out of proportion. I mean, and that's kind of the simplest way to say it is when you look at a project, when it's or a new home, things can look out of proportion as you look at the intermittent steps. But I think really what it comes down to is before they can move on from the foundation is they have to do their as-built. So at that point, there's certified grades and all that. So that's looked at before they can start framing or doing any of that kind of work.
One last question on Latonia. I'm not real familiar with that street, but is that the standard colonials built in the 70s? Is that that area?
I don't recall. I think there's a little bit of mix, but yeah, mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a new build is going to.
Yeah, it's very in Troy right now. We've got a lot of these large houses going in. So I mean, in a lot of the areas, we've got older houses that were built low. They're low relative to the road. They're low relative to a neighboring parcel. A new home is built. It's typically built up to try and get it to drain away from the house. And May, we had, I think, 25 or 26 days of rain, so the ground was fully saturated. We had water in areas. If you didn't have water in your backyard in May, you will never have water, because we were, I think, 3 inches or better above historical average. So we had fully saturated, so when it continued to rain, everything was running off. So that condition itself brought up a lot of issues that I've never had more calls, concerns about drainage on new home construction this year than this year. It's been nonstop. I mean, we've dealt with dozens and dozens of these.
I think sometimes it's the communication sometimes that gets lost, and I would just ask to talk to Mr. Doherty, and I think the assurance from the city is that when this is all said and done, the grade will be the way it is supposed to be. There won't be any flooding issues. The draining issues will be taken care of, so there will not be any drain issues. And I think that's what everybody wants to hear,
yep.
Is that when this gets all said and done, there isn't going to be any issues, because we're going to make sure that it drains properly. And I do have some experience with Latonia. I know many years ago someone that built a house there, and there is the water table is very high there, especially on the east end of it, because I know somebody that built a home there, and they had to build the walls like 6 inches or 6 feet because of the flooding. So I think they just want some reassurance that we're going to make sure that it's done properly and by code, and that there's not going to be any draining issues for the residents. And I think that's what they want to hear, and I think you can tell them that's what we're going to do. Thank you. Any other comments? I would like to make a comment on the medical marijuana building. This is the second time I've heard this happen to a landlord, and I don't know if this is an unintended consequence of the ordinance that we passed, but it does seem to me that at least I didn't perceive this as an intent for us, that when a tenant was lost, that building would then be useless. And quite honestly, I don't think it's unreasonable to allow a transfer, to make sure that building can still be used for the purpose that it was intended, and all of the money that was put into that building. I'm not saying we need more licenses. I'm just saying we decided on a certain number of licenses, and at least I thought from my perspective it wasn't to hurt the current businesses the way that the ordinance was. So City Attorney Bloom, do you have any comments on that?
I would just say, Mayor, that there's more to the story, and that we are aware of some other issues with that particular tenant, not being able to access not being able to comply with the ordinance provisions. So there is more to the story in that particular case. However, I mean, again, we will take our direction from City Council, but it was my understanding when it was drafted that you wanted to limit the footprint, and the way of doing that, because we do have more than what the cap is. So that's the issue right now, is that there are so many of the establishments out there. We do expect with recreational marijuana coming that there will be some changes. It's taken a little bit longer. The state will not start accepting its applications until the end of this year. So we do expect that there will be some changes before too long as well, because you can't, as of right now, have recreational marijuana and then also be a recreational marijuana provider and then also be a caregiver. So there may be some fallout from that as well.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks. Just as a follow-up question, so is it your position you think that because we're still above the cap, this would not have been much of an issue had we actually gone below the cap, then there'd be an available license?
Correct.
So there's going to be some
Correct.
difficulty there. And you brought it up in just a second ago, the recreational. I know Councilman Henderson and we've talked a lot about opting out officially as the City of Troy. I think we've given our consensus that that's what we want to do, but I know other communities, like many, I see article after article saying, listing all the cities and townships that have opted out, but do we have a plan for when Troy will officially do that?
We do, yes. Unfortunately, I've been dealing with a lot of other things that have come up and our fires, so that is something that is on my desk. I will get it to you as quickly as I can. We do have the recreational marijuana rules finally. Laura did release them later than they expected, but they have been released, and so as soon as I can get to it, I will be bringing it to you, and we'll do a comprehensive try and address all of these issues at once.
Thank you. Councilman Henderson.
I think, our intent, I think, initially was, if we by attrition lose some of those locations, not a bad thing, because we can control a little bit better. But to his point, and I know the other instance that the mayor was speaking about, you have one building that may contain 2 or 3 licenses. So you lose one license for whatever reason that is, and all of a sudden it becomes not economical after a major investment in a business to be able to operate that business. So now you lose potentially 2 other businesses within the same building. And, you know, taking my, I hate marijuana hat off for a second, you know, I think that we do have to consider that one-off situation like we're presented with tonight and make a business decision for somebody who's, you know, got a lot at stake here. We've allowed them to do business in that realm, yet now you can't because, shame on you, you lost one of your licenses. So I think we should at least take a look at that. And I don't think that is in conflict with my past positions on marijuana.
City Attorney Bloom?
I would just be very, I would urge you to exercise caution because a lot of, for example, the massage ordinances, we have a cap on the massage ordinances as well. So this is a method that we have used. It's an ordinance provision that we have. It's a similar ordinance provision. So I would just remind you that it might not just be the marijuana that would be impacted. It might be other industries as well.
Do we have a similar scenario in that particular industry then where you would have multiple licenses operating within the business, within the building?
It's, I don't know. It's potentially. I don't know. I don't have the listing, but it's possible.
It's possible. Okay. Thank you.
If there's some, I would just like to get some information when you get time about if there are other issues involved or what other issues, but I have a, once again, I'm not trying to get more, but I do have some sympathy for a business person that puts millions of dollars into a building, and then the unintended consequences are because you lose one license, you may lose the whole building. So it's just food for thought. If you could just respond back from his email that he sent us with the other issues that may be going on, I would appreciate it.
I just want to make sure also that there is consensus of council members before I do any work on that as well. I'd like to get consensus to provide a clear direction for me.
Does anyone else have any objection to at least getting information on Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
I'm always a supporter of getting information, not always a supporter of creating additional work if necessary, but if it's something that can be reasonably answered for us. My other concern was, and I don't know off the top of my head, there was a lot of litigation involved with these licenses. Yes. I don't know if that's still in effect.
It's still pending, yes.
And I worry about doing too much with the ordinance while those issues are pending. So.
As do we. Right.
Understood, and that could be the short answer. Does anyone object to having a short answer, or was that good enough? Is that good enough?
I'm not sure I have direction, Mayor. Sorry.
I know.
I'm just...
I'm not saying you do either. I just, it could be that simple. But, okay, we'll move forward. Any other comments from council or administration regarding public comment? There are no council referrals this evening, so we'll move to council comments. Councilman Henderson.
I'm not sure if this is the right place or later on, but I just wanted to thank City Manager Miller for putting a memo in our hands about the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Committee. I know that there's been talks ongoing about between the city and the group to try to bump that up a little bit. They are volunteers, and we all appreciate and love the fact that our volunteer firefighters save the city a lot of money. And so I appreciate, again, the timeline that we have here. I know that I've been asked several times at various functions throughout the last 3 or 4 months what the status is. So I know that the firefighters are anxiously waiting further communication. So again, I appreciate the information that you've given us tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Henderson, for bringing that up. I'm on that board, and I share the same sentiment. So glad to see that making progress.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
It's never too early to start talking about the frightful 5K. I saw it in the Somerset Gazette this week, and a big fan. I have literally no information about it in front of me, but I think it's troymi.gov/frightful5K. I think you can register now for our 4th annual Frightful 5K, which starts on the Civic Center campus. They close down Big Beaver, a portion of it on a Sunday morning. You get to run. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it again. It's very cool to get to run on Big Beaver with no traffic. And it's, I believe, the last Sunday in October, I think. So don't even quote me on that. But I'm excited about it as always. Registration is now open. It's $25 if you register now. I'm sure there'll be some really cool flyers coming at some point, or maybe not, some artwork. And we will hope to see you out there running. I'll be running again. So look forward to seeing a lot of you.
I'll be running in costume again.
Councilman Pennington.
Over the weekend, Brooks Patterson passed away. Brooks was obviously one of the biggest leaders in the champion for Oakland County. His record of public service was probably second to none in bringing good things to Oakland County. I read in the newspaper. Now, did he create Automation Alley, or did he just take credit for it?
No, he created by assigning, I forget the gentleman that started. He always used to come. Ken Rogers.
Okay.
Yep, when Ken Rogers was a deputy.
The reason why I crack it like a joke, as a joke like that, because many times when we met him, he was always cracking jokes. I mean, he needled the mayor every time that we got together with Brooks. The first time I ever met him, I was only on council for probably 10 months, maybe almost a year, and he knew who I was, and so I was surprised that, and he said, well, you're the one that took Janice Daniels' place, and I said, well, no, not exactly, but he was a very interesting man. Like I said, he was partially responsible for making Oakland County one of the most successful counties, not just in Michigan, but in the nation. And he will be missed.
Absolutely. I did get to know Mr. Patterson over the years through events, and no matter what political party you're on, his interests were always in Oakland County, and he made that very clear. And at least from my perspective, the city of Troy has a 3-year rotating budget with a 5-year outlook, because we took a look at what Oakland County was doing. And I think you should always take a look at what somebody's doing successful, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we're a AAA bonded city because of Oakland County being a AAA bonded county, and they're a AAA county because we're a AAA city. So I agree he's going to be missed, and he did a lot for our region, that's for sure. And his interests were always in Oakland County, that's for sure. Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I too wanted to comment on the passing of Brooks Patterson. He was admittedly a polarizing figure, and certainly in the span of 2 minutes, he could probably say something that would make you roar with laughter and then really anger you at the same time. But his passion was definitely for Oakland County, and one of the talents that he had, and I think everyone acknowledges it, was being able to recognize talent, recruit talent, and make sure he had the best people working for him. And setting that as a standard at the county level also filter down at the local level. And you can see that, as the mayor described, Oakland County was AAA bond rated, and we are too, because we picked up so many of the best practices. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize him, acknowledge his accomplishments, and pass, thoughts and prayers to his family. It's a difficult time, even when you know a lifespan is likely cut short due to cancer. It's never easy to deal with it when it gets here, particularly with pancreatic cancer, where the time span is quite short. I had an uncle who passed of the same thing, so I understand very well how quickly things move, and my thoughts are with his family and the prayers too.
Councilwoman Horwath.
Mr. Patterson was so funny And I found myself laughing at things that I was also blushing as I laughed and wondering if I should be laughing at the jokes sometimes. He could just bring a whole room into laughter, and he enjoyed his work. Like Councilman Pennington said, I was so impressed with how he knew everyone. And he talked to you like you went way back, even though you didn't necessarily go way back. But every time he saw me at an event or State of the County, he was always very kind and wanted to know why I thought what I did about different things, and he listened and cared about it. And I'm very sorry that he went through what he did in these last months, and he did so bravely. And Mayor, to the credit of councils that preceded this one and that you were part of, fighting to do that 3-year rolling budget and 5-year outlook and really managing according to what those numbers told you is why we have the financial outlook we have, and you've really protected the AAA bond rating. And that model and following that model, I can't take credit for it other than that I know that it was the right thing, and I would like to continue that as well, and we've done so. And I think that brings me Mr. Mayornik's comments about the power of a city manager here in Troy. In our city manager, we have someone with experience here for 20 years, close to 20 years.
19 this month.
That saw that example at the county level and lived the example here in terms of the ethics. I too had been hearing from firefighters, about what's the plan. You hear the city attorney talk about her workload. We've watched the city manager now staff up with an assistant city manager, with a finance director who had been here before and is here until we hire another one long term. There are multiple people in this mix to provide the check and balance to him, and he's the first guy to say and talk about the importance of that. And I think that's important for residents to understand that that's his thinking. We can policy ourselves like crazy, but at the end of the day, what matters is the integrity inside the people who are reporting to us on council. And as we have our issues amongst ourselves as this body and trying to clean up on the elected side, on the appointed side, I think we need to be supportive of this staff and recognize what it's been through, the additional workload. If people are feeling like things are a little bit delayed, that's because there's been a lot of cleanup as what would happen when you have somebody, when you have the situation we had. And I just really want to thank the staff. When I look at the investigative corrective action plan, just the amount of work that's going on behind the scenes on top of all the day-to-day work. We've had a couple late nights in recent meetings. I know that's not easy. They're right back to work first thing in the morning. The staff, I really appreciate the staff and the work that they've done in helping us regain the trust of our city residents. And I look forward to locking arms with you all and continuing that process. As Councilwoman Abraham mentioned about Mr. Patterson and how he would surround himself with quality people, that's what we work for here and are striving for. And I really appreciate the quality of the personnel we have here. And I wanted to say that out loud. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Next are the reports. Any council member have a comment on the reports that were in the agenda packet this evening? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session this evening, so thank you for coming this evening. We are adjourned.